This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. All so that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show, and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice, and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the three hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, you know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week, and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Before we begin, I just want to advise people that there is a interview as part of this episode. We don't really talk about that much, but I wanted to make sure that people stick around to the end of the discussion to make sure to hear Emily Hasty. She is the author of Columbo, Make Me a Perfect Murder, which is a fantastic book, one of many great authors that we've spoken to over the years here at The Shabby Detective. Definitely one that you want to check out. All right, on to the episode. Welcome back to The Shabby Detective, yet another Columbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike White. Joining me, of course, is Mr. Chris Dashew.
I was contemplating whether or not to drop this one at the beginning, so I'll just get it out of the way now. I prefer to go by my business name, Mr. Hugh Janus. That's all I can think of the entire episode. I'm such a fucking child. Milo Janus? Milo Janus? Is his middle name Hugh by chance?
I just kept thinking of Judge Dredd with Jürgen Prochnow going, the Janus Project.
All right, what's the other one? Janus. Janus, that's what they call him in GoldenEye because nobody knows how to pronounce it. Milo Janus.
We are back and talking about Columbo rather than Corky Romano. We're diving right into the fourth season. It's the 26th episode of the show. First in the fourth season. This episode came out September 15th, 1974. Directed by Bernard Kowalski, written by Peter S. Fisher, who has taken over showrunner duties this season, and it is from a story by Larry Cohen. And I'm doing everything I can to avoid talking about this episode. This was not one of my favorite episodes. Chris, what did you think of An Exercise in Fatality?
Interesting. You don't like this episode, huh?
Not a big fan.
I'm going to turn it back on you. Why are you not a fan of this episode? I'm so curious.
I guess it's Robert Conrad plays a part in that.
Bob Conrad, Robert to his friend.
I'm pretty unfamiliar with Robert Conrad. I didn't really watch a lot of shows that he was in. Things like Baba Black Sheep or the Black Sheep Squadron.
Wild Wild West.
Yeah, the original Wild Wild West.
Jim West.
It's not him facing off against a giant spider, mechanical spider, I don't want to watch it.
Or a racist Kenneth Branagh half man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Men of your size are in short supply.
Wicca, Wild, Wild West. No, just something about this episode just has always kept me at a distance. I think I know what it is, and I think it's that 94-minute running time. I think it's just way too long. And there are scenes in here where they are basically making fun of Columbo waiting when he's waiting around for a computer printout. I don't care, guys. And just also, the clues aren't very compelling. And from what I understand, this was Peter Fisher basically rummaging around through clues from other episodes and picking some of those. So you got answering machines, you've got the light on the telephone, you've got the shoes being tied in the wrong way. I'm trying to think of anything else, but then it's also a weird one because you have Columbo losing his cool, which is an interesting thing. But yeah, it's just an odd episode for me.
Audience, if you've never seen this episode, pause and guess which of those things is how he gets caught. It's the stupidest option of all of them. I'm not opposed to this episode. I actually think this episode, it's interesting because, like you've already alluded to, it goes in some different directions. When Columbo flips out, he's bringing the heat here. It's not that he hasn't done, but it's few and far between when he's doing the I am visibly rattled and angry at you. This is not a thing that Columbo does frequently, if often. However, I think this is the angriest I've ever seen him in this episode. He's pissed fucking off at him at the hospital in a way that's like he's not ever really lost his cool like this before.
Yeah, I still wonder if when he lost his cool with Leonard Nimoy, if that was real or not. This goes back all the way to Prescription Murder for me with the way that he was flipping out in that. And I think that the two episodes are a little bit related as far as it's about somebody who's losing their life or almost lost their life because of the murderer, and he gets to take it out on them. So I want to say it was the secretary in Prescription Murder. Oh yeah, he loses his temper with the secretary. And then with this one, you've got the wife of the murdered man who almost killed herself by mistake? Question mark? That
right
had drank all this and I couldn't sleep, so I took a bunch of sleeping pills. I'm like, is that what you're telling the people from the police department?
Is that what it said on the bottle?
Yeah, really.
Take as many as you need. Take as many as you'd like. Yep. I don't think that's how that works.
If you don't fall asleep within the next 20 minutes, take another handful.
Amount undefined. Handful, just your hand.
Some people have bigger hands. Some people have smaller hands.
Exactly. We're going to say it's around 12. It's interesting because we don't think of Columbo as that kind of character who loses his cool. Honestly, the lack of him losing his cool is what makes him such a compelling character. And I was recently on an episode of Ryan Verrill's show Reconnected, and we were talking about propaganda. And I had this epiphany moment where I was like, man, I've talked about a lot of things with police officers, either in it or adjacent. Barney Miller, Kolchak is police adjacent. This is not even police adjacent. This is a police officer. But I think what, in my mind, makes these not, quote, propaganda, unquote, though I could see someone saying that, is the way that the characters of the police conduct themselves within the narrative. And Columbo, yes, is an atypical police officer, but he's the kind of police officer we all hope, wish, and know do exist, maybe in not the quantity we wish, but a genuine good guy all the way through with no shade of gray. He's very black and white, like Columbo, and that's what makes him a good police officer. But again, like in the wrong light, it could be perceived as negative. But I think, at least for me, when it comes to these kinds of police shows, Barney Miller and Columbo, the police act atypical of the way we expect them to and the way we've seen in other things. Which I think when people talk about propaganda, I think more of, the cops are just murdering the villains with wanton abandon and fuck it, who cares? That's not what Columbo's about, but that's why this episode is so bizarre, is Columbo gets himself to a point that like you've already alluded to, has really only happened one other time. And Robert Conrad is good in this episode, but I don't think he's good enough to get Columbo to that point. He's one note bad the entire time, which is he's an asshole. Everybody knows it. And nobody has a nice thing to say about him either. There's no complexity to his character. He's really one note. It's the note that's perfect for opposite Columbo, but for 90 minutes, I don't think so. And the way it resolves itself, we've gone through this before, where it's like, there are all these roads that one could take, a pick your own adventure style thing where it's, could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be this? And you imagine as you watch the episode, like, where is it going to land? Where is that roulette wheel finally going to land? Is it going to be the light on the phone? Is it going to be the answering machine? No, it's the shoelaces.
Of course it's the shoelaces.
Even you laughed just now. Wait, what? What the fuck? Doing the research ahead of time, it comes across as contrived because it is contrived. Because you've backed yourself into the corner and gone, none of the other options are as good as the murderer would have tied his shoes and he... This is like Columbo, this is not the airtight case you think it is. I don't think.
Yeah, I kept waiting for that guy. What's his name? Lacey? I think they say his name about it.
Oh, get it? Get it? Lacey, like laces?
Yeah.
Wow. Like, what is this? This is like infantile shit all of a sudden on Columbo. Like, who's writing this? Bert and Ernie? His name's Lacey because the shoelace. Oh.
Yeah, I kept waiting for him because he basically has all the evidence and things.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay. I think that's the other thing, too, is that our murder victim is a dumbass because he does the same thing that has happened so many times. Oh, I'm going to blackmail you, or, oh, you are doing something. I'm going to find out the truth and really blow the whistle on you. So it's either the people that have been blackmailed or are trying to blackmail, or, oh, I've got the goods on you. He's not going to blackmail Robert Conrad, but he's going to say, okay, these are all your underhanded dealings, and I'm going to tell all your partners, and we're basically going to bring the feds or the Better Business Bureau, one or the other. I think the Better Business Bureau packs more heat. We'll bring them down on you, and you're going to jail, buddy.
It's like the whistleblower at Boeing going to be like, hey, I'm going to tell the world about what's going on here. Oh, yeah? Hopefully you don't get into an accident on the way home. It's reverse James Bond villain logic. Like on Rankin' on Bond, a show that you can find on our respective Patreons. The Bond villains bloviate often when James Bond is in their grasp. It's like, why are you doing this if only necessitated by the plot? Here it's the exact same thing. Like we have a innocent or righteous character outing themselves to the villain, and the villain just goes, huh, so I have to kill you, huh? In what fucking universe? It is contrived. It always feels contrived. And the show doesn't always go this route. That's why this sticks out, because the show normally does a better job. That Jose Ferrer episode was the worst example. I am going to tell them on your son. Dare you to stop me. This is the same thing, essentially. I don't know why we don't think that this is contrived when we're sitting and writing it, because the audience can tell when they watch it. It's too obvious of a setup to keep going back to, right? You would think.
I would think, yeah. And then the wife who gets the information from Lacey, she basically does the exact same thing. She's, oh, yeah, hey, I got this visit from this Lacey guy, and I've got all kinds of interesting paperwork. He laughs in her face, and then she ends up having an accident, not committing suicide.
Totally not. We swear.
You guys are both dumbasses here. Like, you're both like, oh, yeah, we're going to take you down. Yeah, you don't do that to Robert Conrad. Robert Conrad, I think the other reason why I don't like him is he used to threaten everyone who watched television, because he used to hold up a little ever-ready battery on his shoulder, and then he would be like, go ahead, I dare you to knock it off. I mean, it was scary, man. I'll tell you.
I dare you to knock this off. I dare you to compare anybody's batteries, with alkaline power cells. I'm trying to beat them for long life. You know what? You can't. When you want long-lasting energy, you can't buy a longer-lasting, all-purpose power system than gold, red, and black alkaline power cells from Eveready. Come on. I dare you.
I didn't want to buy ever-ready batteries. I was afraid of.
The only thing I've ever seen Robert Conrad in, other than this episode of Columbo, is he plays the cop who goes after Schwarzenegger and Jingle All the Way the entire movie.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And at one point, Sinbad calls him Barnaby Jones. And I don't know why, other than because Robert Conrad has gray hair, because Barnaby Jones is played by Buddy Ebsen.
That's right.
The guy who was the head of the Beverly Hillbilly clan. And I never understood the joke because I remember being like, oh, he's calling them that because Robert Conrad played Barnaby Jones. No, that's not it at all. He's just calling him that because he's an old police officer.
An old man with white hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert Conrad just, if he's a good actor, they're not letting him do much. It's one note. And even when we've had characters like this kind of reprehensible to the core, they're given a little bit more to go off of. This guy is just out for number one, period.
Oh, yeah.
This guy is motivated by money. He has all these. I love the moment where he's like, what about A through F manufacturing, which you own? What about the thing, which you own? He's like, it's about the quality. It's about the quality. Maybe he's not that great of a villain. And I think maybe this is me just reaching a little bit. So tell me to shut the fuck up if I'm wrong. But maybe it's because he's just too realistic. It's just too realistic of a villain. Realistically, I think this might be one of the most realistic villains we've had on Columbo. He's just like, yeah, I'm just financially defrauding people, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be weird if there were people like that in real life doing that? Huh. It's almost like it's not fun because it's too on the nose.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's like a Jack LaLanne type. But that's it. It doesn't go anywhere. He's just an asshole who's ripping people off by having them pay his companies that are garbage for perceived quality products that he is saying they're quality. That's it. There's not much to that concept that Columbo can go off of.
What you're going to want to do is take some of these supplements that I take. That's how I get as huge as I am. You're going to want to take these supplements every day. You can get right at my website here, prisonplanet.org. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. This is a bulletproof plan. It's cow's blood mixed with bull excrement. And you inject it straight into your eyeballs and it protects you against COVID. Now it turns you blind, but you don't get COVID.
It's that same fucking nonsense. But that's the thing. He's not that character. If this show were being written now, there would be that twinge of he's a con man. That's the thing. If you look at this guy, he's living the lifestyle that he is purporting to like support financially and that he's made his money. So hard for you to look at him and be like, he's not at least successful outwardly. That's the problem with this episode is there's really nowhere to go with any of this. Like that the concept of he is a Jack LaLanne type, that's it. That's as far as they go with it, really. And then one scene of Columbo working out, which is as weird as it sounds.
And that he's doing it to basically ingratiate himself with Conrad. It's so strange.
It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
And to your point, 90 minutes of this, you already alluded to it, but I want to talk about probably the best scene in Columbo, the show so far. 10 minutes of Columbo asking this woman, hey, is this computer done printing? Columbo versus the computer, everybody. Was it Peter Falk that thought this was funny? Because I feel like a lot of these things are like, Peter wanted it, so we're going to give it to him. Is that what this is? Because this is so pedantic. At some point, I'm like, are we for real? Does Tim and Eric write this shit? It's like anti-comedy at this point.
And that he's there whistling this old man. I'm just like, okay, how much control do you have over these episodes now? Because this feels very indulgent to Peter Falk.
Hilariously so.
Yeah.
We were talking about it before where it's, he's getting his oil checked by that cop or his emissions in the middle of LA. And that's like another 10-minute scene. Are we that afraid that Peter Falk is going to walk away? That we have to give him like everything he wants and then some? I guess so. I get it. I get that he's the character of Columbo, period. And nobody else can play that character, period. But like 90 minutes and we have 10 minutes of this nonsense? Come on.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he was basically getting everything that he wanted behind the scenes. And yeah, I think he was getting a lot of stuff that he wanted in front of the camera as well.
And that's the only way I can interpret something like that, because there's no explanation otherwise. Because the entire scene is predicated on, he goes to a woman and says, hey, I need information about this guy. And she goes, okay, let me put it into the machine. Then we have 3 interactions where he's asking her what's happening before she even explains to him that it's a computer accessing a database. And then he just keeps going. And then my favorite one, absolute favorite one, he gets the printout. And then he's like, where can I get the information? And she's like, it's on the thing I gave you. Oh, yeah. Like, what? And then they filmed it feels like an additional scene. They were like, okay, Columbo, now leave. Walks out, goes into the elevator. And then the quality of the footage changes. He walks out, mugs for the camera, does a 360, grabs his cigar, and goes back into the elevator. So there's another 40 seconds here on top of this nonsense. Really, guys? It feels so indulgent, and I don't get it. Because even when the show has been indulgent in the past, it's not to this extent. And I don't know why.
There are some good things in here, some interesting things, but they just seem to get overshadowed by so many of these bad things, at least for me. You seem to have enjoyed this episode a little bit more than me. But yeah, there are a lot of things where I'm just like, okay. Like him talking so slow on the answering machine. Though I swear it feels like even all the way back to Lee Remick, it feels like she had an answering machine. And so he shouldn't be that surprised by them. Like when the guy says, I'm not here right now. And
it's not the best way to open the 4th season.
No.
I feel like, look, and this might just me trying to get into the mind of a puerile child, but is the thing that anybody remembers from this episode the moment where Gretchen Corbett opens the door and Columbo's just like, oh, boobies, because that's effectively what is that not what the gag is? He's like, I'm thinking of something else. I'm surprised he didn't say, I'm thinking of 2 things. It's that level of kind of childish humor, which I was like taken aback by. I was like, wait, this is Columbo of all things. What is going on here? I don't know. In a show that never resorts to that humor, it was shockingly puerile. And correct me if I'm wrong. If that's not what the gag was, please tell me. But she opens the door in a bikini and he's just, oh, I've never seen a lady before. Who's writing this? Someone who's clearly never really taken their time to study the Columbo character? That's what I don't get. That's what I don't understand. Story by Larry Cohen, of all people. And then Peter Fisher has worked on Columbo several times, right? This is not his first go around the bend. He worked on some of my favorite episodes in the last season. And then, this. He co-created Murder, She Wrote. It's a shockingly mediocre entry for the 4th season. And again, like at this point, the 3rd season, I felt went out on a pretty high note. Like the 3rd season, I think throughout the 3rd season was pretty strong. I think the last episode of the 3rd season is pretty good. I think the 3rd season overall was pretty good. It had some interesting moments, but I don't think it had anything as pedantic as this 94 minutes feels. This feels like the longest 94 minutes we've seen of this show.
Well, and you get those weird things too. Like I'm trying to remember, like the coroner basically is, I can't tell you anything. And then he keeps asking questions. Okay, I still can't tell you anything. And it's like, all right, what a useless exchange. And then the way that the janitor is really abusive to Columbo. And then honestly, I can't believe that not one of those cops is wearing brown shoes. They all are wearing black shoes. And the victim is the only person wearing brown shoes in that entire gymnasium. Okay, sure.
Brown scuff marks all over the floor.
Good thing that he
brown scuff marks?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Good thing he waxed that floor the night before. That's very important.
And we haven't mentioned the way that, so the setup is Robert Conrad murders Philip Bruns with his bare hands, right? Like he chokes him out, but then he makes it look like he had his trachea crushed by the weights.
180-pound weight, yes.
Okay.
And apparently he's only ever lifted 150 pounds before. But while he's there working out alone at night at his gym, he's going to try 180 pounds alone with no spotter.
It's so contrived. And I wish that the episode had gone in any other direction but this one. Look, you do have a workout guru, exercise guru. So they have to have the guy murdered in the gym somehow. But Yeah, the way that he kills him, the way that he stages his body, that's not how that works. We just tear the guy's head fucking off of his body. It would if you drop. So I have a home bench press set up downstairs. I don't do nearly 180 because that's not the point of what I'm trying to do. But if I did that much, I would not do that by myself. There's no fucking way. People don't do that by themselves at the gym, for fuck's sake. That's 180 pounds is a lot of weight. It would rip your head clean off your body if it landed on your neck. You wouldn't just be sitting there like this. Your head would be ripped off of your bodies. I wish I could say that this was an episode of Columbo that deserves the 94 minutes that it has, but it really doesn't. When there's 10 minutes that I can point out that are just overindulgent Peter Falk-isms, yeah, you probably could have stand to swap this with one of the 70-minute episodes that will come later in this season.
There's so many parts of this that are just padding. Some of the run that he does with Conrad and the whole thing where he's trying to find a place to put the sand that's in his shoes. And just too that this is a shoe-based episode. And we had the line, I think it was it 2 seasons ago, the whole like how much those shoes cost. And he's always talking about shoes. So to make shoes the way that we find out who the murderer is and how the murder happened, that's really pushing it. It's really a lot. I'm surprised our poison cigar would make more sense. Or even if they like lock the guy in the sauna or something.
Poison protein powders, something more than just the weight landed on his neck. Like sure, I guess
these scuff marks are here under this ping pong table. Okay,
yeah, and at the end, Columbo is I gotcha, and it's do you though? That's the thing we've talked about over and over again. Is ultimately at the end of the day, if these people were to go to court and have their day in court, because Milo Janus is not going to admit he did this. He doesn't even, he's not going to. No fucking way would he. That's what happens in real life. People don't cop to these things. That's why they go to trial. Someone doesn't cop to guilty. They go to trial and try to prove and a jury of their peers is not going to convict this guy. There's no fucking way. There's a mountain
of evidence, all kinds of cash checks, just like payments to porn stars. You get away with that stuff. And then you come in and you fight against it because you think that you're going to win.
That's the thing that gets lost in sometimes the time since this show has been out is we see these kinds of people all the time. And these people get away with it. Not to be specific like you just did, but just to speak broadly, there are people in all facets of all industries at the high levels getting away with this kind of stuff all the time. There's actors who have gotten away with it. Greta himself got away with it, right?
Mm-hmm. Johnny Wahlberg, yeah.
Yeah. There are all kinds of people that get away with all kinds of terrible things because they have a lot of money. And that's the thing. He would get away with it. And Columbo, in a lot of ways, gets more people dead to rights than he gets Robert Conrad in this episode. And yes, he gets mad at him at the end, but the anger that he's showing towards Robert Conrad does not translate to the evidence he thinks he has on him, which is it's not as overwhelming as he thinks it is. And yes, there are so many different directions the episode could have gone, and it went in the weakest one, which is the twist or the how Ketchum is because he was dead before he... Explain to me how the shoes were put on factors in because he wouldn't have put his shoes... He knew not to put his shoes on that way or...
Yeah. When somebody ties shoes for you, they do it to themselves. So the big loop's on one side. And then if you tie your own shoes, you're doing it towards yourself. So the loop's on the other side. So yeah, that's how he gets them. Sure.
Really? Do you take that as a legitimate explanation here?
It's a way of catching him, but Louis Lacey's got all the goods as far as like why. He's got the motive.
Right.
The guy's got the opportunity. And he definitely has the means because he's the only one that can lift 180 pounds and our victim cannot.
Yeah, the idea of the way his shoes were tied, that's Jesus Christ. They got OJ, they had a glove, then they had OJ put it on and they couldn't get him. Like, that's not enough. It's not enough. And I hate that the episode tries to pass it off as enough because this just yields a weak version of this show. It's just a weak episode because the How Ketchum is not well thought out at all. It doesn't even really feel like they thought about it at all. Like you said, if they're just picking over old remnants of episodes come before, I'm surprised there wasn't a contact lens in the trunk of a car and Columbo extolling how good he is at jacks with people. I was waiting for that again because this is in the same vein of those episodes where we just roll our eyes at the end and go, okay, if that's the direction you ultimately wanted to go, fine. But I don't like it. And yeah, it detracts from everything else the episode's doing, which is not much. I feel like we're ragging on this episode, but I actually am with you. I had to watch this episode 3 times because the first 2 times I watched it, taking my attention away from it was very easy because it was very boring. About the 50-minute mark, and there's still 40 minutes left. Like at the 50-minute mark in another episode, you got like 20 minutes left, 15 even. There's still another half an hour. Really? And on top of everything else, like we've alluded to, the victim's wife tries to kill herself, unalive herself. That happens in the last 5 minutes of the episode. Fucking literally. It's like where the episode kind of wraps up is in the last 10, 15 minutes of the episode. So not a lot happens for 50 minutes is what it feels like.
Why did you say unalive herself?
That's just another way of suicide.
Okay. I've never heard that before. And I just saw a headline about the boy who lived, and it was something like the alive undead boy or something like that. So
yeah, unaliving is a way to say suicide on YouTube to not get demonetized.
Okay. Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Hey, man, you got to work around that algo somehow.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the way they say rape. They say something else. Some people just say grape. Some people just because you know what they're saying. There's not another word for suicide. Unalive is the,
If only everyone threw themselves out a window and then defenestrate could come back. I'm still waiting. I went ahead and I registered defenestrate.com and I'm just waiting for it to come back.
You and me both. Ultimately, if we have a 94-minute episode of this show, it should be using that time wisely. And I do not think this episode does use its time wisely. I think it just spins its wheels for, like I said, about half of the time. And look, if you want to have Robert Conrad just mugging with Peter Falk and I'm smarter than him, it's like, okay, fine. But we know Columbo's going to get you in the end. Problem is, this time around, this guy's going to walk free. Columbo's going to look like an idiot. They're going to bring him in to testify. And he's going to be like, the shoes. I'm like, Mr. Columbo, what about the shoes? Oh, shit. Columbo's going to get egg on his face because of this one. That's the way I feel. And there's not a lot of episodes I feel that way, but we've had this conversation before about how contrived and how easy it is to get away with things, even if the show doesn't want to acknowledge it. That is the reality of what's going on here.
So I have some bad news, which is this season is 6 episodes long. 4 of them are 90-plus minute long episodes. There are 2 that are 70s, so thank goodness for that. But bright point is that, and I don't tend to do this, I don't tend to give it away like this, but there are at least 2 episodes in this season that I would rank as maybe not my favorites, but definitely up there. So I'm excited to talk about those with you after this, for me, really poor start of season 4.
And I noticed that. I wanted to talk about that as we come to the close of this episode, but looking at the season at large, 2 less episodes this season than last season.
Mm-hmm.
Next season is 6 again, so 2 less than season, whatever the last one was. But then season 6 is 3 episodes.
Yeah.
3 episodes.
Those, I believe, are contract talk.
Oh, fun. We have now been through the seasons of the show that have had the most episodes, correct? Season 2 and season 3 had 8. That's insane.
Yeah. And now it's each time we do a quote unquote season of our show, it's just going to be 6 episodes long. So expect some more of those special episodes in between the seasons, folks, because there's a lot of things that Falk was doing outside of Columbo that we want to talk about, and even Lincoln Levinson, we want to talk about those guys as well. So yeah, there's going to be there's going to be some interesting times here. So,
yeah, there's some seasons with 3 episodes. That's not a season. That's like a limited series. That's like a limited engagement. 3 episodes? That's crazy. But hey, at the same time, maybe we'll find some episodes of Mrs. Columbo to take care of our time, because who doesn't want to watch Kate Mulgrew as Columbo's supposed wife that totally doesn't actually exist and then is named something else because they get divorced off screen?
Kate loves a mystery.
What in God's name? So that is like what, between season 7 and 8? That's like 1979. So we're still pretty far away from that.
Yeah.
But I did find it strange. And we've already talked about Peter Falk being cantankerous. I'm shocked that we're just 6, 6, 3, 5, 4, 6. What? Jeez Louise, man. Cantankerous, or at this point he's getting paid. I was reading something that said the equivalent of $600,000 in US current money per episode at this point. That's making so much money.
Yeah, I think it was like, I can't remember.
120,000, I think.
Yeah, I was reading that he had been making 100,000 per episode. Now he's making 130,000 an episode,
which is like $600,000 per inflation today.
What a pay raise!
What a boss! Really good for him. Again, all of the Falkisms that get in the way sometimes of this show aside, knowing your value and standing up for it is something that I do 100% appreciate and I do support, obviously. Even if like his own weird idiosyncrasies get in the way sometimes, knowing your value and making sure that they fucking pay you for it is not something I'm going to ever fault someone for. Because
we're Falk them for.
Yeah, Peter Falk is Columbo, and there's a reason we've never seen a remake of this show, because it's such a singular character by such a singular actor that there's no point in attempting to bring it back. So just do Poker Face, which is essentially the closest thing we've ever gotten. But yeah, I read that and I was like, man, what a fucking boss. Just, hey, hold him up and keep holding him up, because fuck him. It's just the big studios anyways. And look, we know now in 2024, they don't give a shit about paying people, and they didn't give a shit then. What makes me think they give a shit then if they don't give a shit now? I know they don't care. We all know they don't care. Like when they're cutting down trees so that people can't pick it in the shade, we know they don't care. So yeah, Peter Falk saying, fuck you, pay me. You can vibe with that.
Until we come back next month to talk about honestly one of my favorite episodes, Negative Reaction. Chris, what are you up to these days?
Podcasting by myself, podcasting with others, podcasting with you, all over to weirdingwaymedia.com, but a whole host of other things over there that I am not on. If you're into Columbo, you might also be into 80s TV shows that have ladies in them, and some of them are cop adjacent as well, like Cagney and Lacey, and our friends Sharon and Susan over at 80s TV Ladies got to speak to both Sharon Gless and Tyne Daly. We can't summon Peter Falk from the grave. We wish we could. We just make the choice to talk about shows where most of the people are dead at this point. But Sharon and Susan on their show, 80s TV Ladies, don't have that problem. So if you're into this kind of stuff, you might be into that. And that can all be found at weirdingwaymedia.com. What about you, Mike White?
Like you, I do everything over at weirdingwaymedia.com. And there are a few things that I listen to outside of my own shows, including Wake Up Heavy. I know that I star on there every once in a while. And I do mean star. I guess I'm there every once in a while. And
he's the star, everybody.
Look out, Mark Begley. Here comes the real star as I put on the bow tie. Yeah, no, Mark does a fantastic show over there. I love what he does. And just one of many talented people that we have here under the roof of weirdingwaymedia.com.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind the scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, The Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
Before we get out of here, let's go ahead and play that interview with Emily Hasty that I mentioned before. She is the author of Columbo, Make Me a Perfect Murder. I started off the interview by asking her how she got into academia.
When I was in college, I imagined first writing and then perhaps working in publishing as an editor. And my first couple of jobs out of college were at different presses. And I realized that I didn't want to be in that job. I actually wanted to be the writer. And I'd had some college professors who had pushed me to graduate school, to think about graduate school. And at the time, I just thought, oh, they must say that to everyone. Since I've become a professor, I realized that is very much not the case. You really don't say that to everyone. So I had it in the back of my mind. And in college, I studied literature. I took one film class. It was one of the hardest classes that I took in college, along with physics. And after college, I was just watching a ton of movies and catching up on what I hadn't learned in college. And that led me to want to go to graduate school and actually study film and television from that perspective and live my life as a teacher and a scholar.
Do you specialize in any particular area?
I do. I guess I specialize in multiple areas at this point because I've been doing it for a long time. I have specialties methodologically, which is I tend to link a theoretical or philosophical study with a historical one. And so I'm actually interested in how histories are written, histories of films, histories of television series, and then histories of the very discipline in which I work. So I'm interested in those kinds of questions. How do we choose those kinds of works that have become part of a canon, for instance? What figures do we look at and who might we look at instead? So those are some of the broader concerns and methods of my work. Another concern of my work is after I had my first job, I got my first job at UC Santa Cruz. And I decided that I wanted to practice writing about something that I love. And so I wanted to see what that would look like, what it would feel like, what kind of critical tools I would need, and if it could feel as significant as writing critique of something and looking at the problems with something. And so I wrote about a photographer named Dirk Westphal and interviewed him many times over a couple of years and tried to articulate what it was that I loved about his work. And from then on, I really made a decision that how I was going to approach my work, that I was going to try to bring to light those things that I loved, that I thought were important, that had something to say. And that, of course, led certainly to Columbo. But with my very first book, I would say I also had a great affection for the figures I was writing about. So I work between film and television and different eras. Currently, I'm pretty steeped in the 1970s, as well as in contemporary film and some television.
Tell me about what you wrote about before Columbo.
So my first book, it was developed from my dissertation. It was called Cupboards of Curiosity, Women, Recollection, and Film History. And I looked at different figures from especially the silent period. And I read them as a friend of mine, my friend Nikki, called it textual figures. I saw them as textual figures, as women who we understood through the kinds of work that they produced or the kinds of work that were made about them. And I was interested in those figures who had been lost in some way or had particular skills, kinds of expertise that I thought had been either recognized in a narrow field or in a narrow framework or had been overlooked. And so some of the primary figures I considered were the world's first filmmaker, Alice Guy Blaché, French woman who then came to the US and started her own production company, and whose history really has been known in great part until the last 20 years when more of her films have been found, but who's really known for her through her own memoirs So I was interested in that phenomenon that she tried to maintain a place for herself in history. One of my figures that I looked at was Louise Brooke. I was fascinated by her own critical writing about film. Another figure I looked at was Colleen Moore, the silent film star, and I was really fascinated by her dollhouse, amongst other things. And so I looked at her as a collector, and I was able to connect the notion of collecting things to recollection, to memory, to history. And then I looked at a range of women who had written how-to books, cookbooks, and so positioned them as experts of sorts, ranging from Mary Pickford, who wrote, she had a ghostwriter, of course, the book Why Not Try God, up through figures like Isabella Rossellini, who wrote the book Some of Me, Sophia Loren's cookbook, which is incredible, the silent film star Zezou Pitz's cookbook, Zezou Pitz's Candy Hits. Yeah, so I looked at a range of textual forms in order to think about how history is constructed. My second book was for the British Film Institute's Film Classics series. And I felt very dedicated to be sure that Ida Lupino, the actress and filmmaker, writer and producer, had a place in film history, which she really didn't. There was very little work done on her at the time. And I was just fascinated by how much she did. She moves between film and television, of course, as a guest appearances in 2 episodes of Columbo, and you well know. I really was trying to just get anyone to write about her. And I was talking to publishers saying that they should publish works for her. I was being a real nag at a conference. And then I was nagging someone that they should promote her work for the Film Classic series. And then the board decided, well, I should write that book. So I chose The Bigamist, which I felt brought together a number of the films that she made in her independent production company. And then, of course, we have the Columbo book. And I'm currently at work on a second BFI Film Classic volume that I was invited to do, which, unbeknownst to my editor, she wrote to me on my birthday. And it was one of the greatest birthday presents ever to be invited to write about Clute, which is one of my favorite films.
Tell me your history with Columbo and tell me how you position Columbo inside of your own kind of sphere of academia.
Columbo was one of the only series that my family watched when I was a kid. I was a huge television viewer. In fact, sometimes I think the reason I became a film and television scholar is because my dad once said to me, "You're going to have to marry a rich man so you can sit around and watch television and eat bonbons all day." I think he said that to me when I was like 10. And I think my first thought was, bonbons? That's a different way to do that, though. I do eat probably too many bonbons, but I don't actually get to sit around all day. So instead, I found a way to make money by doing this kind of work. So the family watched only a few shows. We watched Mary Tyler Moore and Bob Newhart on Saturday night. And on Sunday nights, the kids, I was just a little kid then, we watched the Disney movie, of course. And then as a family, we watched the NBC mystery movie. And my favorite was Columbo.
What about Columbo stood out to you more than the other detectives?
I suppose I took him a lot more seriously than McCloud. McCloud, I had certain affection for him, and he was my mom's favorite. My mom grew up in Wyoming, and she had affection for Cowboy in New York. But it felt, I think even as a kid, it felt a little bit like a shtick. I didn't really feel an attachment, I think, to him. I enjoyed Macmillan and Wife, but I think also, again, as a child, I probably didn't understand the marital banter, and I couldn't see it as now I might see it as a contemporary screwball comedy of sorts. But Columbo, I just had an affection for him. And I also found myself learning, even as a child, when I watched the series. And it was really the first film or television series I ever saw that made me realize that I could take the medium seriously, that there was something to know about film and about television, how it's made, what kinds of even decisions are made, and then even how it's projected. I remember learning all of these little details. And I think also just, of course, what again is as well or better than anyone, his manners easy and so warm. And I think the fact that he rarely gets angry, but always, of course, is doing the right thing appealed to me. I'm not sure if I can say the 10, 11-year-old kid I was in the last couple of seasons if I liked the fact that he was often misunderstood. I don't know if that was part of it, but I certainly appreciated the fact that he was right in spite of what others thought. So might have appealed to my own stubborn sense.
I want to go back to what you were talking about as far as the projection and the mechanisms and these things, because that plays right into your book, Columbo, Make Me a Perfect Murder. How did you decide this is what I want to focus on for this? And just that, because you focus so much in the book about learning. It's funny, I'm trying to remember the other author who wrote about attention and how Columbo demands your attention and teaches you attention, but you come at it from a different way. It is teaching you how to learn, basically.
I felt that if I was going to write a book that was about a single television text, I felt that it needed to go beyond that series itself. Mm-hmm. And Columbo enabled me to do that. That I didn't want to narrowly cast the study of the series. Mm-hmm. And I certainly didn't think it should be narrowly cast. And the more I watched closely, the more I got to know the series, and this was well before I decided to write a book on it, the more I recognized its own complexity in terms of simply guest stars, right? For instance, or the cultural milieu in which he's involved through these murderers. And certainly, of course, I noticed immediately the class distinction. And so it just opened up all kinds of possibilities for me to understand not just the series, not even just detective television, but the culture in which it was produced and in which it was seen. And then over time, as I then began to research for the book, I became just fascinated by all of the intersections with writers and directors and actors, and then Falk's work and Levinson and Link's work beyond it. And it just became this incredibly capacious television series so that it allowed me not just to learn about it, learn about television, learn about these cultural objects or media objects, but it also allowed me not to just learn about TV, but to talk about what TV is and what TV can be and what are the possibilities of analysis that television itself as a cultural form offers to us.
Was there a particular tipping point for you as far as when you were thinking about doing the book and you're just like, yeah, I need to do this?
I do remember this dinner. I was out with my friend Marty and her husband. They were visiting in Santa Cruz. I can remember so many things about this. Very strange. She probably doesn't have any idea how much this played into my work. But we were having supper, and I think I said my goal as a scholar, this was a long time ago, over 20 years ago, I think. I said we're to write a book about Ida Lupino and Columbo. And I think her husband then said, and then your career will be done. And I was like, my work will be done. This is probably the reason why I was so slow in completing the work, because in the back of my mind, I thought, then it's all over. But that doesn't properly answer your question. Even maybe more simplistic response I can offer, which is these book series with academic publishing houses were coming out that were focused on singular television series. And I both felt like it was wrong that we should not just look at television series in and of themselves, that television must always be connected to more, whether it's more television or more beyond kind of the realms of television. So I both thought that it was maybe a wrong-headed project that was designed to sell books rather than to develop academic work. And at the same time, of course, I thought I want to write one of those. And I thought if I wrote about Columbo, it would make me or allow me to really work beyond the confines of what I was worried television studies was effectively becoming. As a scholarly discipline, it was falling prey to market demand. And that I saw this in a kind of range of phenomena, whether it was these single volumes based on a single television or these volumes based on a single television series, or in the ways in which anthologies of scholarly essays would change continuously in order to update not the ideas, but the series. And that seemed to think of students as consumers, to think of scholarship more directly connected to a marketplace. And of course, all of those things are true in a lot of ways, but I also wanted to work against that. And my interest in television is often focused around its formal structures.
So you've got the text, you've got Columbo, the show itself. But I seem to remember in the book, you're saying that when you started, it wasn't that easy to see every single episode. It's not like we had the Blu-ray box sets or those things.
With Columbo, I never really had difficulty accessing episodes of the series. My difficulties came when I wanted to look at other work made by Levinson and Link. I'll tell you a little bit about Levinson and Link and how I came to their work. It started with a moment of real serendipity, which is when I came to Amherst College from Santa Cruz. I went out for drinks with the woman, her name is Betsy Cannon Smith, who was at the time the head of alumni relations, I think, at the college. And I don't know why. I think because I came to start a film and media program. So that must have been why she wanted to meet with me. And we were sitting down and she basically said to me, "What can I do to help you?" Which I was just astounded by the question that really anyone would ask me that. But particularly someone in her position would ask me that. And she then asked me, what was I working on? And I told her about the Columbo work. And she sat there. She's just amazing. She has an incredible memory for people. And it's what makes her incredibly good at her job. And she sat and thought for a moment. She said, "I think I have a connection to that series." And then she put two and two together and she said, yes, there was an alum, David Black, who worked with one of the original creators of Columbo. Just like that. She was able to put that together. She got me in touch with Mr. Black. I actually invited him to campus, and he talked about his work on television, and he connected me with Mr. Link. And of course, Mr. Levinson had died in 1987. And so Mr. Link was the remaining member of the team. And I chatted with him. He was very kind about talking to me. And I asked him questions and just chatted about episodes and so on. And at the end, first station, I said, "I hope you wouldn't mind if I contact you again in case I have other questions." And he paid me what really is one of the greatest compliments of my life, which was, he said, "Yes, I would. You seem like a very nice woman and you know a lot about Columbo." So that connection was really important because it changed the ways in which I was thinking about the series, and that I then was able to think a lot more about the work of the producers. And that led me to think about and look at other work that they had done. And then that was only possible because of this archivist at UCLA, who, as I said in the acknowledgments, he really is a hero of this book, a hero behind this book. It just simply would not exist in the form if it weren't for him. And he should be an ambassador for archivists everywhere because he's just incredibly knowledgeable of course, but also generous, and generous with his time and generous with his knowledge, and was a person who wants to make connections for people and so on. And so he asked, are you familiar with the other work that they were doing in the 70s? And so I went out to UCLA because I wanted to see their series that was just one season that they'd made for the Wednesday version of the mystery movie, because it only exists at Universal, where it's very, of course, hard to get access to materials, and at UCLA. So I went and saw the series Tenafly, and that absolutely changed so many ways in which I was understanding the series and understanding my own book. And from there, I went on to look at their made-for-television movies of the 1970s, which are also housed at UCLA. My respect that I already had, I think perhaps more innately, for Mr. Levinson and Mr. Link just grew tenfold, given the kind of work that they were doing during that time. My chapter on Levinson and Link it wasn't part of my original plan, but it came from looking at more and more material. And then that chapter is very much based on this archival work of looking at those materials, also looking at what was published about them during the time and since. And then, of course, my conversations with Mr. Link. And so that was very different from my research for other chapters, certainly. But it was akin to my approach to the writing. And this is part of also what took so long, was that just another association begets another association and so on.
It's a little ironic because I became aware of you because of the screening you did. I believe it was with UCLA, the screening of Enough Rope that happened during the pandemic.
So you saw that. You've seen Mark Quigley, my great hero. Yeah.
That was amazing to see that whole presentation, and that it took place during the pandemic. What a breath of fresh air. But to see Enough Rope, because I've read about this thing for so many years and never had a chance to see it until I saw your presentation of it.
Oh my gosh, that must have been so much fun given your work with the podcast. It must have been transformative.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was fantastic.
What did you think about the original Columbo?
Well, it's funny how Columbo just changed throughout the years. Not only the original Columbo, I would love to have seen the stage play and seen how that played out. But just to see the way that even the first appearance of Peter Falk, how so different he is from just the next pilot. But you really get to see that line between that original Columbo to that first Peter Falk to that second Peter Falk. It's amazing.
That's so true, because Bert Freed, the original Enough Rope, played it New York, but frumpy, right? He was truly disheveled, right? And then in Prescription Murder, the recreation of Enough Rope, Fox's initial appearance, he's pretty slick. He looks good. His hair is combed really nicely. His shirt looks very fresh, right? So I saw that also, of course, at UCLA, and they're holding, I think that was the first time I saw it. Because before I connected with Mark Quigley, I was doing research at what's now known as the Paley Center for Media Study in New York. And so at the time, I was watching just a ton of Fox early television appearances. The Price of Tomatoes, I first saw that at the Paley Center. I first saw his appearance in Twilight Zone at the Paley Center. And then I was watching just all of his appearances on Johnny Carson with David Frost, his interview with Frost. I can't remember if I think I did originally see the infamous interview between Cassavetes, Gazzara, and Falk with Dick Cavett.
That's pretty special.
It is. And in case Dick Cavett is listening, I do not have sympathy for him. I think that everyone really piled on those men for the spectacle that they made. But these were three men who were as suave and handsome as they were all three like real ethnic types at the time. And they're up against this real waspy to do looking man who ran his own show, right? And I think that it's a far more interesting display of tension around actually ethnicity, around masculinity, than I think the critique of their not great behavior might suggest.
Yeah. That's one of the things I like about your book so much is that you're doing this almost reverse alchemy as far as all of these different pieces and parts that really help create and shape Columbo. And you're taking a look at each one of those individually, and then how do they add up to what we ended up with, which was something that we're still talking about all these years later.
I was familiar with Cassavetes' work, but to be honest, I came to love that guy via Columbo. And then, like you said, kind of reverse alchemy, and went back to look at the various kinds of connections between him and Falk. And I don't know if you've seen any of those interviews from the 70s that include Cassavetes and Falk together. And you could just see that Falk really revered him. And very clear in interviews that have been late 20th, early 20th, really late 20th century, some I think early 20th century, 21st century, but where he talks about working with Cassavetes after Cassavetes' death. And of course, he's just full of adulation. But when they're interviewed together, I just noticed these moments where he looks over at his friend with love and awe at the same time. And I think it was working with Cassavetes that made him want to direct the episode of Columbo, for sure. I believe that Falk was helping to fund their work, right? By giving them continuous parts on the series. Because so many of that group of character actors had multiple roles, both in the original and then even in the reboot. One of my kind of favorite appearances of the Cassavetes crew is in Friend Indeed, which was, of course, directed by Gazzara. And there are moments that just simply look like a Cassavetes film. And some of those moments actually include Cassavetes actors.
Right. Yeah. Having Hal Avery there, another stock player, and also a stock player on Columbo. He shows up so many times. Yeah.
It's delightful to trace those things.
What were some of the biggest revelations for you when you were putting your book together?
Tenafly, finding Tenafly. I don't know if you've talked about it before in your podcast and couldn't find any connection to it, but for your listeners who are not familiar with it, this was the series that Levinson and Link also created for the NBC mystery movie on Wednesday nights. And it was the first television drama with a Black male star. And I call it the first because it did precede Shaft in its pilot, but Shaft then premiered its season before Tenafly. And there were just 5 episodes, so it was very short-lived. But it's in many ways a lot like Columbo. His manner, James McEachin plays Harry Tenafly. So he has that kind of similar kindly manner, but he doesn't act like he doesn't know what's going on. Of course, he doesn't share that. But it fascinated me that he talks about his wife, but we actually see the wife, we actually see his home life, right? So there are ways in which it's this extension of what Columbo describes, but never really revealed to us. So I think that was really my greatest revelation, especially because, of course, I recognize James McEachin from 2 of my favorite episodes. One, the Cassavetes episode, Good in Black. He plays the Cassavetes characters, Alex Benedict's right-hand man. And then he's the projectionist in Make Me a Perfect Murder.
I've asked this to other authors that we've had on the show, just because this is something that we talk about fairly often on the show. Do you think that there really is a Mrs. Columbo?
I actually do. I still think it matters, and I actually really do think that there's a Mrs. Columbo. That said, I don't really believe what he says about her all the time, right? Because he just uses her as a way to get information from people or to make people feel, I don't know, more comfortable at ease so that he can go further with them and in conversation. And of course, there are inconsistencies because of the ways in which the series was produced and how the producers and writers changed over time. I do think there's one. Do you?
I am on the fence. There are times where I wonder if Columbo even has a home. It feels like he just lives in the office.
In his car, maybe.
There's Any Old Port in a Storm, where the girlfriend of the victim comes in and there's Columbo burning the midnight oil. And do you even go home? Do you ever have a home? Or one of the killers comes in and there's Columbo sleeping on his chair.
I've got to say, in all these years, that never occurred to me. But you make a very good point.
So what is your favorite episode of Columbo and why?
I go back and forth. And whenever I say it's one thing or another thing, then later I think, no, it's absolutely not that one. It's a different one. It's very hard for me to say. There are certain guest stars who are my favorite, certain moments that are my favorite. I like different episodes for different reasons. I like the care that Columbo extends to the murderer in Any Old Port in the Storm. And of course, the murderer issues one of the best lines, which he says one of the nicest things anyone's ever told him. But when it comes down to it, it probably is Etude in Black and Make Me a Perfect Murder, which is interesting because they're both McEachin. But Make Me a Perfect Murder was the episode that really first taught me something, like where I was, again, as a child. Like I had a revelation about film from watching that television series. And Etude in Black, I'm such a sucker for Cassavetes. I just love him. And I love the way in which Falk plays against him and the moments in which he becomes serious and turns the tables, but not at the end, rather in the middle. And I think that Cassavetes just brings something out in him that's really quite wonderful as a performer. That said, I also love playback with Jenna Rollins. I really love the way in which it explains the work of this surveillance system and recording and editing and all of that, and the kind of illusion of television really itself, I think, is what it's about.
Both of those episodes are so much about that. The television camera is such a major character in Etude in Black.
It really is. It really is. Yeah. And one of the things that I notice about it, I write about in the book, is that at the end of that episode, Columbo and Benedict and his wife are sitting in that darkened room at the Hollywood Bowl, I think they are, right? And he has a film screen and television monitors. And he's working between both of them. And there seems to be an implicit tension between film and television as media forms in that moment. And in a lot of ways, I think TV that wins, because it's so simple in that case to be rewound. He manipulates television images more than he does, or video recordings, I should say, images more than he does film. And then, of course, a kind of kitschy favorite is Fade into Murder. But I think it's more of a favorite because I like to teach it. My students always really like it. So with William Shatner, and also the introduction of the VCR to the detective.
That was something I always loved about Columbo, was the technology and just how he would be so fascinated and then almost always turn it against the killer, which I love. The whole thing of the answering machine that Lee Grant has way back at the beginning. It's like, oh yeah, I was messing around with this and look what I came up with. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that moment. And answering machines come up again, right? In a Lupino episode when her husband is killed. And if I'm remembering, or even photography, right? It's how he catches the Dick Van Dyke character in Negative Reaction.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely loved your book. I think I told you that via email, and it hit all those spots for me and just really took me to places that I didn't necessarily expect. And there are a lot of things in the book that I never put together. So I really thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. It's so nice of you to say. I have to say, I think that television can often be so maligned, and we think of TV as producing dumb or inattentive viewers. And I really do believe that A, that's not always true, but B, that Columbo was so respectful of its viewers. And for my book, I wanted to be respectful of Columbo viewers. And I have to say, in writing it, probably one of the other things that held me back in finishing it was just worrying that I couldn't quite do the series justice to people like Mr. Link or Mark Quigley, the archivist, but also people like you who know every single thing about the series and appreciate its narrative, its artistry, its history, the work that has gone into it. So, long way of saying thank you.
Professor Hasty, thank you so much for your time. This was great.
You're so kind to let me just go on and on about the series that I love. And as I've told my students, or literally anyone, once I get started, I'm sure you are exactly the same. Once you get started talking about this series, it's very hard to stop.
So until we come back next month, I want to say thank you to John Walker for our opening theme song and Colin Gallagher for our closing theme song. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please go ahead and rate and review the show wherever you get it. Come on over to theshabbydetective.com next month. We'll have another episode for you.
Hello, filthy movie lovers. My name is Gentry Austin.
And I'm Casey Scott.
And we're the hosts of the Sin Syndicate, film podcast for something weirdos, anti-criterion bros, and Joseph Sarno aficionados. Join us semi-weekly as we peer into the adults-only theaters and sticky-floored cinemas of the golden age of sexploitation, when the morals were loose, the laws were murky, and the intercourse was all simulated. Find us now on the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.